Is this the dagger?
G'day guys, JB here. 5 weeks into the NBA season. Well, we're well and truly into deeper waters now, and deeper waters they are. There are a lot of teams that certainly look like contenders early. There are a lot of teams that are done, and there are some that are still struggling to keep their head above water. They are fighting for survival. We've got a few stars that have really stepped up and out. We've got a few players that have really taken their game to the next level, and there are just some that they're either pottering away, not getting very far, or guys on bad teams just trying to do their job. Anyway, let's get into it. Week 5 review of the 25-26 NBA season, starting in the East, and we'll start alphabetically again. The Atlanta Hawks, a 2-2 weekly record. They're now 11-7 overall and sitting 6th, and Jalen Johnson really breaking out. I have a feeling that I'll be talking about him pretty soon in my monthly update video for a certain award for the end of the year. 24.3 points this week to go with 9.8 rebounds, 9 assists, 1.5 steals, 0.5 blocks on 3 turnovers. 50% from the field, 47.4 from deep, and 78.3 from the free throw line. He's probably 1 or 2 moves away, 1 or 2 really big months away from some serious consideration about exactly what he's going to be like as a player, but he's dominating early and he's playing really, really well. For the Celtics, 2-1 on the week, 9-8 overall. They are now sitting 10th in the conference, and Jaylen Brown just continues to be Jaylen Brown, one of the early all-star contenders this season. 30 points, 5.3 rebounds, 5.3 assists to go, 1.3 steals on 4 turnovers, 50.8 from the field, 35.3 from deep, 76.9 from the free throw line. I just feel Boston has some extra activation to go. They've had a couple of injuries recently, which has certainly hurt them defensively, and they've got a couple of guys who can certainly step up and step out offensively, but they haven't necessarily been given the opportunity to either, so we'll wait and see whether anything appears out of that. I mean, they're 500 through 5 weeks. That's pretty steady. There are some teams that are 10 below. There are some teams that are well and truly 10 over. But Boston, everything considered, the way they're playing, not a bad record. One of the first teams that was eliminated from playoff contention, well, here they are. The Brooklyn Nets. It's going to be pretty quick. 1-3 record. They're now 3-14. They're 10 below 500. They're 13th in the East. They're not making the playoffs. Michael Porter Jr. continues to show out, a player that is proving why he was who he was thought to be in the draft. 24.8 points, 6 rebounds, 2 assists, 1 steal, and 0.3 blocks and 1.5 turnovers. 51.4 from the field, 40.6 from deep, and 77.8 from the free throw line. They're still a number of weeks away from Cam Thomas, and for me, they're too far back from anything. They're done for the year. Charlotte, they are borderline done for the year already. 0-3 record, 4-13 overall. They're 12th in the conference, just a smidgen above Brooklyn, who are in 13th. But they do have a couple of positives, and one big one there. Con Knipple, 3 games played, 27.3 points, 5 rebounds, 3.7 assists, 0.3 steals, and 0.3 blocks on 2 turnovers. 59.2% from the field, 56.3 from deep, and 100% from the free throw line. Right now, after the last couple of weeks and injuries impacting other stars and certainly some underperforming, you would think someone like a Con Knipple is right up there with Cooper Flagg for Rookie of the Year. Pretty good start to the year. Pretty good start overall to his career. Again, Miles Bridges has had some fleeting performances there. LaMelo Ball, when he chooses to be uninjured and on the floor, has had an impact here or there. And Brandon Miller's been pretty unsure of himself this year. But Con Knipple, another really nice pickup there for Charlotte. They've hit over the last couple of years. But again, are they going to just farm them out eventually and get rid of them? I don't know. But you don't want a player like this in purgatory for long. For the Bulls, they're exactly where I thought they would be. 2-2 record, 9-8 overall for the season. Currently sitting 9th in that playing tournament and not getting much consistency out of anyone not named Nikola Vucevic right now. In saying that, Ayo Dosunmu was clearly, for me, their best player in 4 available games. And again, it does come down to 4 available games. 18.3 points, 3 rebounds, 1.8 assists, 1.8 steals, and 1.3 turnovers. Good shooting splits, 58.7 from the field, 50% from deep, and 73.3 from the free throw line. I just haven't understood the hype early about Chicago. Okay, great, Josh Giddey, a guy who can play when he needs to be at that level. But right now, the Josh Giddey they thought that they had signed following the last 25 games of last season has only been there fleetingly. He's had some 20-point games. He's tried to be consistent on the scoring. But the role they need him to play and the type of player they need him to play as just hasn't been there. Kobe White's another guy who's been injured and trying to get in and out, but ultimately for me, the one guy who's been consistent for them has been Vucevic. They won their 2 games this week. I thought he was their best player in those wins. Chicago, again, just sitting middle of the pack. Cleveland, they're looking a little better. 2-2 weekly record, 12-7 overall, now 4th in the East, and of course it's going to be tough out there in the East because there have been some bolters in a conference that many people thought was going to be wide open. Just how wide open, though, I think people were quite shocked. Donovan Mitchell, for me, having another yet underrated season. He's been a chronically underrated player in this league for a number of years now, and again, a guy who's going to get a mention in one of my videos next week. In his 4 games played, 26.8 points, 5.3 rebounds, 5.3 assists, 1.3 steals on 3 and a bit turnovers, 48.1% from the field, 36.6 from deep, and 87.5 from the free throw line. This guy's doing a lot of work for this team. He's helping generate a lot of wins off the back of some key injuries, particularly when you look at Jarrett Allen, particularly when you look at someone like Garland as well. Evan Mobley's been contributing. He did take a pretty big step last year. Again, I thought Evan Mobley had a top 10 player of the year effort last year. He certainly hasn't been there this year. He has been producing, but it just hasn't been to that same level. He did come on a lot later last year, so we'll see whether that picks up towards the business end of the year. But right now, Donovan Mitchell is really in cruise control, and for me has to be one of, if not the best guard in the East. But he is coming up against this guy for the Detroit Pistons, a 3-0 weekly record. They are 15-2. They have won 13 straight, and they are the first team in the East. They are realistically one game, when you want to look at games played, they're one game off OKC. That's the kind of level we're talking about with the Pistons so far. And Cade Cunningham, tremendous as always. 26 points, 8.3 rebounds, 8.7 assists, 1 steal and 0.3 blocks on 3.3 turnovers for the Pistons, leading the way, getting the job done, pulling them literally out of purgatory. This time 2 years ago, I believe they were something stupid like 2-15, and now they're 15-2. They had the longest losing streak in league history. They're on one of the better winning streaks in franchise history. I believe it's their longest winning streak since their last championship in 2004. That's the level that they're at. And of course, someone like Cunningham really leads the way, but someone like a Jalen Duren taking a massive step, a guy that we will likely be talking about consistently throughout the year. He's been huge. Guys like a Dennis Jenkins converting on 2-way contracts to really bust out and show out what they can do. Another guy who's been crucial. You've got to think Jaden Ivey's been away as well, so Detroit probably plenty left in the tank. Certainly more in the tank than the Pacers. They are done. 1-2 weekly record, 2-15 overall, 14th in the conference. And I'll put my hand up and say very early, I was extremely wrong about this team. Injuries have been a nightmare for them. A lack of availability has been a nightmare for them. But they have had a shining light, and that's this guy here, who again is trying to step up where he can. Pascal Siakam, 3 games played, 24 points, 7 rebounds, 4.7 assists, 1.3 steals, and 1 block a game to go with 2.7 turnovers. 56.8 from the field, 31.3 from deep, 77.3 from the free throw line. Doesn't have any help. The Pacers are done. A team that isn't done, and a team I thought would be a bottom 5 team, but is clearly not a bottom 5 team, is the Miami Heat. A 4-0 weekly record. They're now 12-6 and sitting 3rd, and they're doing it by any means necessary and doing it really, really well. Bam Adebayo, 4 games played, 18.3 points, 8.3 rebounds, 2.5 assists this week to go 0.8 steals and 1.8 blocks on 1.5 turnovers. Shot 45.1% from the field, 37.5 from deep, and 75% from the free throw line. And again, Tyler Hero has only just come back. They got the win in that game. Norman Powell has been a really consistent shower. He's showing again why he was a borderline, for me at least, an all-star last year, and nearly by the end of it consistently an all-star last year. Bam has shown that he can be at that level. Tyler Hero has shown he can be at that level. And someone like an Aaron Wiggins has shown he can be at that level. Other positives include someone like a Khalil Ware, who's still growing as that next big for the Heat. Really good stuff for them there. They're starting to actually get to the point where it's going to be tough to even knock them out of playoff contention, which, as I said, is a lot better than what I thought they'd be, which was a bottom 5 team. Speaking of teams that are suffering through injuries, we mentioned this at the start of the video. Milwaukee, they're 0-3, didn't win a game this week. I believe they lost their last 5 of their last 6. They're now 8-10 after a really supersonic start. and they're now 11th in the conference, so they're now currently sitting as a bottom 5 team. Ryan Rollins, again, has been a real standout for them in his 3 games this week. 22 points, 5.3 rebounds, 9.3 assists to go with the steal, 0.7 blocks on 3.3 turnovers. Shooting left to be desired at 42.6 from the field and 25% from deep, converting from the stripe though at 90%. But it shows what happens when you take away the main man on any given team, where a roster is solely constructed around him and he's not available. Because look what's happened. Like, this is what happens when you take out a top 3 player on the planet. It's what happens when you take out a top 25 guy all time. That's what we're talking about with the Bucks. Like, huge absence right there. It'll be interesting to see how long this goes for, how long Giannis is out for, and what sort of bounce back we get. But the Bucks need to be really, really careful, because they could have gone from battling for a top 4 seed to battling for a playing tournament due to a 2-week span of injury. For the Knicks, they're still sitting really nicely compared to what they probably could be. 2-1 weekly record. They're now sitting 5th in the conference, and Jalen Brunson proving to be their guy there. 3 games played, 29.3 points, 3 rebounds, 6.3 assists, 0.7 steals, 0.3 blocks on a turnover, 52.4 from the field, 36.3 from deep, and 86.7 from the free throw line. The contention that does come here at the moment is there is a bit of a battle with Karl Anthony Towns and Jalen Brunson about being the man once again. The Knicks overall 10-6 on the week. And the only concern about that is they can't afford to potentially get into a fight about who the number 1 guy is. In an Eastern Conference that is just so tight right now, you have to also look at the fact that their away record hasn't been great. They're dominating at home, that's awesome, but you're only as good as your away record. If you're not winning games on the road, you are in some trouble as far as the playoffs are concerned, because you've got to win games on the road. So that'll be the one thing that I want to see them factor in, getting more consistent, punch out of Jalen Brunson and Karl Anthony Towns, get some wins on the road. That's pretty key for them there. The Orlando Magic, as we thought, would turn it around and have turned it around. A 3-1 weekly record, 10-8 overall, and now 8th in the Eastern Conference. Franz Wagner, another consistent week, 22.5 points, 7 rebounds, 4.5 assists to go, 0.5 steals, 0.3 blocks on 1.3 turnovers. Shot 50.8% from the field, 33.3 from deep, and 83.9 from the free throw line. Desmond Bane is really starting to work his way into this team. He's starting to be that reliable second option, the call-up first guy that you need and want, adding to the fact that you've got a bunch of other guys on this team that have consistently performed, that are also getting their spots, that are also playing well. That's exactly what Orlando needed. And they did struggle early, and again, a lot of that comes to the adjustment of, adding a third piece that is as potent as Bane. We haven't seen a lot of consistent play for the last 12 months out of Franz Wagner and Paolo Banchero. Banchero's injured now, so again, let's see what the turnaround time is for him and exactly how he looks when they come back. But Orlando, they managed to get above 500. That's really nice work for them and put a lot of naysayers to bed. Philadelphia, they've started to slip again. It does come down to injuries. It comes down to inconsistencies, but it's not from their start player. 1-2 weekly record for them. They're now 9-7 overall, sitting 7th in the East. And Tyrese Maxey, again, continues to be one of the leaders in the Eastern Conference. We will be talking about him next week. 3 games played, 35 points, 3.3 rebounds, 8 assists, 2.7 steals, and 1.3 blocks on 3.7 turnovers. You got 53.7 from the field, 42.1 from deep, and 85% from the free throw line. Joel Embiid's not seeing many minutes. Paul George is coming in. He's not having the same impact. VJ Edgecomb's just going through a bit of a slump. Again, he's a rookie. He's had some concerns. We'll see how he pans out as well. Someone like a Jared McCain just needs to work back into the lineup. They've got some other nice pieces around them as well, Philadelphia. But Tyrese Maxey has got to be the answer. He's got to be the number 1 option, particularly when it's going to look all but sound by the end of this season that he is absolutely the go-to guy in what they're going to do moving forward, particularly around a VJ Edgecombe. They're about where we thought they'd be if they're going to be contending. If they start to fall away, that's where the concern will be. But right now, we'll see how they manage this little rough period. They've still got a little bit of time. It's the end of December where we'll really start putting a bit of pressure on. But right now, they're managing it where they can. Talking of teams that are managing it, I like this team early in the season. There are a few people that didn't back them in, and I thought, okay, they should be a playing team at the very least. Well, right now they're the second best team in the East. They're a 4-0 record. They're 13-5. That's the Toronto Raptors. And Brandon Ingram with a really nice week showing out why he was brought into Toronto. In the 4 games played, 24.3 points, 5.3 rebounds, 4.3 assists to go, 1.3 steals, 0.3 blocks on 3.8 turnovers, 48.6 from the field, 42.9 from deep, and 80 from the free throw line. This is the first real standout week we've seen from him, keeping in mind that there are potentially, depending on any given night, 3 guys playing like all-stars up there in Toronto, which is huge. Scotty Barnes is clearly the number 1 option on this team, and he's been tremendous. Ingram having his best week, but he's been tremendous. And someone like Emmanuel Quickly has been playing really, really well from the guard position there in Toronto. You've still got RJ Barrett, you've still got Jakob Poeltl, you've still got their bench. But for me, when you've got 3 guys who on any given night can take the mantle, can take the lead, can lead the team, that can really put pressure on the opposition, and they're selfless in the way they do it, that's when the concerns start to rise as an opposition. Toronto are putting that pressure on. They're playing really, really well. They're getting to a point, much like Miami, where you thought they might be a bottom 5 team. They're potentially a playing team. But now you're starting to look at not being able to eliminate them from the playoffs. That's pretty good early on in the season. On the other side of things, Toronto, the worst team, in the Eastern Conference, the Washington Wizards, didn't win a game this week, 0-3. They've only won 1 all season, and they're last in the conference. CJ McCollum was their best player. My God, someone get him onto a contending team. Get him a ring. 17.3 points, 3.3 rebounds, 3.3 assists, 0.3 steals, 0.3 blocks, and 1.3 turnovers. 46.7 from the field, 38.9 from deep, and 75% from the stripe. Yep, Alex Sarr's been really, really nice. He's a really nice player. He's got to be their number 1 guy moving forward. George, not too bad. Koulibaly, when he's about, not too bad. Middleton, he's been quiet, let's be honest. He's already got his ring. Let's go and get CJ McCollum a ring. If you can actually trade around for some handy pieces there, that wouldn't be too bad, but you still need some veteran presence. The Wizards are done. Pretty simple. Over to Dallas. They're getting very close to being done in the Western Conference. A 1-3 weekly record. They're 5-14 overall, 14th in the conference. PJ Washington, their best player this week. And that's not a shot at PJ Washington. That's to say about exactly what's going on there with all the possible options you've got in Dallas. 4 games played, 18 points, 8.8 rebounds, 2.5 assists, 1 steal, 1.8 blocks on 2.3 turnovers, 40.6% from the field, 38.5 from deep, 76.9 from the free throw line. It actually was a point this week where you probably could have just got rid of Anthony Davis. That's the conversation right now, is when will they get rid of Anthony Davis? Cooper Flagg had a bit of a niggle, so they rested him. Again, he's been playing well. He started to come to the forefront as far as what was expected out of him as a Maverick, so we'll see what goes on from there, but they haven't really suited D'Angelo Russell well. Again, injury concerns going through this lineup left, right, and centre. Someone that has been a key rotation in the past, Dante Exum, he's been ruled out injured again. I wouldn't be surprised from a pro standpoint in the NBA where that really does cull his career. That's just from an Australian standpoint. But Dallas, they're 5-14. The end of this week could very well, by the end of this month, and we're only speaking a number of days, they're probably going to be out of playoff contention, and that's going to be the worst one that I've got wrong. At least I thought the Pacers were in the playoffs. I thought these guys could have been a conference semi-finalist. Speaking of teams that are likely going to be a conference semi-finalist, the Denver Nuggets, a 3-1 weekly record. They have 13-4 overall, second in the conference, but they do have an injury concern right now. Nikola Jokic is not that injury concern. 4 games played, 30.8 points, 11 rebounds, 11 assists, 1 steal, and 0.5 blocks on 4.5 turnovers. Nice efficient splits as always on the offensive end for Jokic. 56% from the field, 54.5 from deep, and 84.8 from the free throw line. They're cruising, they're playing really well, but this is where Cam Johnson and Tim Hardaway are now going to have to stand up, because Aaron Gordon is out for 4 to 6 weeks. Aaron Gordon was having the best stretch of his career. Now, I know it's only a small sample size, but when you've got a guy like that who's known to perform in the playoffs, who has been a borderline all-star in the past, when he was sitting as an all-star level contender of a player, and he goes out for 6 weeks, he's now not going to be eligible for any awards, he's not going to be eligible for the all-star game, and you're going to have to play him back into a form, most importantly. So we'll see exactly what Denver do, but they have recruited well this year. Can these guys start getting the possessions to perform as we need them? We know that Cam Johnson played really well last year in spurts for Brooklyn, albeit a bad side. We'll see whether he's able to do that on a good team. Here's a team who is literally riding the ups and downs and is starting to look like the old Chicago Bulls of a couple of years ago, where they just can't get 2 weeks together. That's the Golden State Warriors. A 1-3 weekly record at 10-9 overall, sitting 8th in the conference. Their best player for the week, Brandon Pajemski, 4 games played. And again, it is based on playing the games available for your team. 12.8 points, 4.8 rebounds, 2 assists, 1.3 steals, and 1.3 turnovers. 35.9 from the field, 37.5 from deep. This is a guy who should have just kept chucking up the threes, and 81% from the free throw line. Again, the reason that I quantify it from the guy who plays every single game is to show the consistency within your lineup, to help show why you've got the results. Any guy averaging 13 points and under 36% from the field is probably a good indicator of a 1-3 week. Okay, there's niggles, there's concerns. They had some bad turnovers throughout, but you've got some really experienced guys on this team. Some guys who can grow in a Pajemski, in a Kuminga, in a Moody, that if you really allow them to blend in and get their touches, you wouldn't necessarily have results like this. That was the issue Chicago was having with Levine, with DeRozan, that no one else was getting their touches. Nothing against Steph, nothing against Jimmy, certainly a little bit against Draymond. But you've got guys here that can have touches and should have touches to develop their game, and they're not getting them. All of a sudden, you've got a team that's riding the roller coaster every second week. They're now sitting 8th. They've gone from a top 6 team. They're sitting there in playing contention. I know that it's a tight conference, but that's not the look that you want for this team. Particularly when they're going up against someone like the Rockets, who had a 2-1 weekly record. They're now 11-4 overall, and they are still sitting top 4 in the West. And here's a proof of the pudding. A team with Kevin Durant had Armin Thompson, for me, as their most consistent player this week. And he gets it done on both ends of the floor. He's one of the best two-way players in the league. 20.7 points, 7.7 rebounds, 5.3 assists to go with 2.3 steals, 0.3 blocks on 2.7 turnovers, 54.2 from the field, 50% from deep, and perfect from the free throw line. The key here for Houston is letting Thompson still do his thing, whilst you let Şengün conduct the offense, whilst Kevin Durant is still allowed to be a very lethal shooter and a very lethal scorer. The other thing that certainly helps here is that Houston are one of the best offensive rebounding teams of the last 30 years, possessions accounting for everything. But they're not allowing they're getting plenty of second chance points. They're not allowing the opposition to get a basket, to get a stop. When you're factoring in all of that, when you've got a player like Armin Thompson, who's realistically a third or fourth option on any given night, to go ahead and do something like that, huge bonus. And of course, Reed Shepherd off the bench playing really, really well as well, which is a far cry from the Los Angeles Clippers with a 1-2 weekly record, 5-12 overall, 12th in the conference. They're a couple of weeks away from not being in playoff contention. And the sad part about it is that this guy is having to do old school work himself. James Harden having to wind the clock back to his Houston Rockets prime. 35 points, 3.3 rebounds, 7 assists, 1.3 steals, and 3.3 turnovers a game. Shot 51.7 from the field, 42.9 from deep, 83.3 from the free throw line. He's become certainly a more efficient player because he had to become a smarter player as he's gotten older. But it is indicative that a guy like James Harden, who's had to settle consistently over the last 5 years as the second option, has now had to step up and play like his prime self to get the job done. It speaks of your age, it speaks of your injuries, and it speaks of the vulnerabilities that you have as a team. For me, they're 3 games away from being, 10 games below 500. This is a team that should be in the playoffs, but they're injured, they're banged up, they're sore, and they're not getting anything out of this old team that they recruited. They're one of the oldest teams to ever take the floor, and they're showing it consistently. I don't know for the Clippers here. They're trying to hold on to something. I don't know what it is, I don't know why it is, but they're trying to hold on to something. And it's not good because they've got no draft capital to try and get rid of any of these guys either. The Lakers, they have managed to wade the storm though. 2-0 this week, 12-4 overall, 3rd in the conference. And Luka Doncic, really, really nice. Excluding turnovers and his 3-point shooting, had a massive week. 35 points, 8 rebounds, 9 assists on 3.5 steals. He's clearly the number 1 man in Los Angeles this year. That is not going to be debated. He's clearly outworst a top 5 player consistently in the league again this year. As I mentioned, 7 turnovers a game is not great. Well, it's not ideal at all. 22.7 from deep, not ideal. And even 45.7 for a guy of his talent and skill. He should be shooting a lot better than that. 82.1 from the free throw line. I get it. The only criticism that you're sort of seeing with the Lakers at the moment is how exactly are they maintaining these touches now that LeBron's back in the team? How are they maintaining their defensive presence with LeBron back in the team? But a nice steady week. They're still a top 3 team. They're consistently a top 4 team in the West. I still don't see where they're winning a title out of this team, but they're taking the right steps. And it's going to be a matter of time as to when they start making some serious roster decisions. LeBron's going to be no more than the second option on this team all year. They can't afford for him to be any more than that if they want to be successful. But it's how they navigate out of this from this point that's going to be the determining factor. Speaking of navigating, that's the Memphis Grizzlies. 2-2 weekly record, 6-12 overall. So they are still trying to cling on to something. They're 10th in the conference. They're still sitting in that playing contention. And Santi Aldama, once again, their best player on the week. In the 4 games that he played, 17.8 points, 6.3 rebounds, 3.8 assists, 1 steal, and 1.5 blocks on 0.8 turnovers, which is not really bad when considered that at times he's a third option. 47.5 from the field, 30.4 from deep, 85.7 from the free throw line. Your ultimate conversation around this team right now is Jaren Jackson being healthy and Ja Morant pulling his head in. Because if that happens, you're just waiting on Brandon Clark to return. Then you've got a little bit more of a norm and a consistency to this team. Jock Landale's shown that he can play some minutes. You know, there's no reason why they can't try and turn this around if they can stay healthy. And if they can pull their head together. If they can't do that, then they're done. Everyone knows that, everyone understands that. But that's the point they're at now. They need to either put up or shut up. They need to try and make a run to get back to 500, or they just need to bottom out. That's where they're sitting at the moment, ultimately, for Memphis. For Minnesota, they've got a little bit of work to do, and again, it's about getting some consistency and some meaningful impact into their game. A 1-2 weekly record, 10-7 overall, 7th in the conference. Anthony Edwards this week was their best player, a couple of 40 pieces over his 3 games played to average 34 a game, go 4.7 rebounds, 3.3 assists, 3 steals and a block on 3 turnovers. One of the better weeks that he's had consistently over the last couple of years. 49.3% from the field, 36.7% from deep, and 76% from the free throw line. The absence of a Gilgeous-Alexander Walker is proving crucial defensively. Rudy Gobert's still up there as an elite rim protector, but he's not as... he didn't move great, let's be honest. He moved great in his prime, but he's certainly not moving any better now. And the other side of that is that Ant will have a week or two like this, and then he drops off, and then Julius Randle's picking up the pieces. And Randle's been pretty consistent. I nearly had him as their player of the week. But that's the sort of issue that you're dealing with right now in Minnesota. They've lost their defensive identity. They haven't found a way to repackage that on top of it. Sometimes there's not that consistency on the offensive end. You couple all that in, and that's when you're looking at a team that's sitting in that play-in tournament region rather than consistently in that top 6. But it doesn't matter because we're officially up to the worst team in the West. The New Orleans Pelicans, they went 1-3 this week. They're now 3-15 overall. Put a line through them. They're done. They're last. Trey Murphy, a guy that people are conversing about getting him out of purgatory, had a really nice, consistent week in his 4 games played and has for the last couple of seasons, mind you, considering his availability for the Pelicans. 21.8 points, 4.5 rebounds, 2.8 assists, 2.5 steals and 0.5 blocks on 2 turnovers, 45% from the field, 35.9 from deep, and 90.5% from the free throw line. A team ravaged with injuries. Zion Williamson looked good for about 3 games this year. They are done. Put a line in them. Speaking of teams that are well and truly done, they're roasting. They are absolutely roasting. The Oklahoma City Thunder, they are still tracking to annihilate almost the all-time single-season wins record. 3-0 on the week. They're 17-1 overall. They're again, that's what I'm talking about Detroit. You've got to keep an eye on Detroit and the way they're playing this year. First in the conference, and for me, the MVP of the league, and he's running away with it early already. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, 3 games played this week, 33.7 points, 5 rebounds, 6 assists, 1.5 steals, 0.3 blocks on 2 turnovers. 60.7 from the field. Again, I'll say that. 60.7 from the field, 66.7 from deep, and 87.1 from the free throw line. He scores however he wants. He's efficient in however he wants. He's not playing fourth quarters, and he's just toying with the opposition right now. He's having as good a run as shooting guards had in this league since Kobe Bryant. Okay, so you're flying. Not much more to say. For the Suns, they're playing a little bit better than was expected. Again, I thought this could have been a bottom 5 team, but they're starting to push that point of, hey, we want to get 10 above 500 and you can't knock us out of playoff contention, and they've just got this weird mix and match that works. A 3-1 weekly record. They're 11-7 overall. They're 6th in the conference, and the guy that was deemed to be the issue in Memphis, the guy that Houston traded away, it's somehow turning into a win-win situation for both teams. Dillon Brooks, 4 games played, 22 points, a game to go with 3.3 rebounds, 1.8 assists, 1.8 steals on 2.5 turnovers, shot 45.9 from the field, 32.4 from deep and 64.3 from the free throw line. And the thing that nearly killed his career was one series against Los Angeles because the media pounded him. And he's proving it's not the point. He's proving that's not what was going to happen at all. The guy can play. He's been able to play consistently. He's proven that he wasn't the culture issue that was happening over in Memphis. He's proven to be one of the key reasons that Houston rejuvenated to the point where they could attack Kevin Durant. And now that he's been traded for Kevin Durant, he's proving to be a crucial reason that Phoenix aren't a below 500 team. Let's see if anyone's got any common sense to understand that and assess that on its merits and go, we were wrong. I doubt it. But Portland, they've slipped a little bit. They're back to probably where we thought they would be. An 8-10 overall record, 2-3 on the week. They played 5 games this week. Like, huge week. 9th overall in the conference. But Denny Avdija, a guy who just keeps performing, and really no one talks about him unless you really go and watch Portland. 22 points, 6.2 rebounds, 7 assists to go, 0.6 steals, 0.4 blocks on 3.2 turnovers. Had an inefficient week by standards that he's shown this year. 41.5 from the field, 37.1 from deep, and 72.5 from the free throw line. The guy just gets out and plays. He's very complimentary, particularly when you look at the fact that someone like a Drew Holiday wants to re-establish themselves. Someone like a Shaedon Sharp wants to come out and establish himself now that he's got the freedom to do it. But Avdija, he's just got that pro presence, and that's the big thing that the European guys bring to the league. They bring a pro presence because they're recruited into their pro clubs over there at 12, 13, 14. You know, they're playing against men in EuroLeague basketball at 16, 17, 18. So their skills are refined, their professionalism's refined. Yeah, they take a little bit of a time to adjusting to the American game. It's a little freer. There are a few rules that they've got to adjust to. But there's a reason that they play all right. There's a reason they play really well. Because they're pros. Avdija is a perfect example of that. What isn't a perfect example is the lack of professionalism right now in Sacramento, who themselves nearly have a line through them for the year. 2-2 weekly record, 5-13 overall, 13th in the conference. And if you want to see a real reason why they're not playing well, DeMar DeRozan was their best player in the 4 available games this week. He averaged 18.5 points. So 18.5 points, 2.5 rebounds, 4 assists on 1.8 steals, and 0.3 blocks on 1.5 turnovers. 50% from the field, no attempts from deep, so working inside the arc there. 97.1 from the free throw line, so I'll give him some credit. But Sabonis is now out injured. Levine is not playing where he needs to. Guys like Keegan Murray and Monk, you know, they're injured, they're out of form. Zach LaVine can't put 2 weeks of basketball together. And on top of that, Russell Westbrook has turned into your most competitive starter again. He continues to prove why he should be on a team, at least from a cultural standpoint, Russell Westbrook. And you've had to put Schroeder to the bench. Add to the fact that one of the guys you really targeted to try and have a deep offensive run is now averaging 18.5 points a game when he's the most consistent option out there. He's older, he's more senior, I get it. It's not a great look. Sacramento 2 games off being out of it. The Spurs, they're maintaining, and a lot of that is because they brought in another great presence to lead the way. 2-1 weekly record, 11-5 overall. They're 5th in the conference. We're still waiting to see exactly how long Victor Wembanyama is going to be out for, but De'Aaron Fox has been crucial for this team. 3 games played, 26 points, 3.7 rebounds, 5 assists, 1.7 steals, 0.3 blocks on 2 turnovers, 51.1 from the field, 38.9 from deep, and 76.7 from the free throw line. He's showing what he was in Sacramento. He's showing why the Spurs chased after him. He's proving to be a vital asset for this next generation of young Spurs players. He's making the life easier for Mitch Johnson, and he's managing this injury pattern that they're going through at the moment, particularly with what is going to be that next generation of a Stephon Castle and a Victor Wembanyama. So the Spurs are fine. They're cruising. I mean, they're above where we thought they'd be. I thought they'd be a playoff team this year. I didn't think they would be flirting around that top 3 or 4 early in the season, let alone still sitting top 6 towards the end of November. But we'll see how they go. They'll see how they manage it. Someone like a Harrison Barnes has been crucial as well as a glue guy. Someone like a Kelly Olynyk, someone like Luke Cornett has also been... it's Kennard or Cornett. I'm pretty sure it's Cornett. I get confused there. French vanilla connection, as they call it. But these are the kind of guys that you need on your team. This is the kind of chemistry you need, and that's how you really build up a squad. Finally, for Utah, they've slipped after a couple of big weeks. 0-4 record this week, 5-12 overall. They're 11th in the conference. Again, a bottom 5 team as predicted, but they're showing some fight. You wouldn't think, compared to the coverage and how they've played, that they have had as good a season as the Clippers, or the Clippers have had as good a season as them. That's the comparative issue we're at now. Keontae George with a nice week. It's been Lauri Markkanen in the last couple of weeks, but George back at it once again. He's a guy that they need to focus on. They could really do something with Markkanen and George if they really wanted to. But I think they're going to just be trade pieces. 27.3 points, 4.5 rebounds, 7.8 assists, 1.3 steals on 3.3 turnovers, 53.4% shooting overall, 42.4 from deep and 81% from the line. I mean, you've got a guy who can have 25, 5, and 7 here. A lot of guys are doing that, but he does it efficiently, and he's very hard to stop in the open court. He gets up and down as quick as someone like an Aaron Fox. That's the kind of player that we're looking at. We'll see what Utah can do. They're almost to the point where they need to make a decision that, hey, we've got to compete and win. We've got to do something with Markkanen or George. We've got to bottom out again and look for trade pieces. Lauri Markkanen talked about hot property, but again, are you really risking that much to lose him if you go into a proper rebuild with someone like a Keontae George? I don't know. It does remain to be seen. What doesn't remain to be seen is the remainder of this video. Thank you for tuning in, everybody. That is my Week 5 review for 25-26. We'll have, obviously, Week 6 next week as we look at everything to the end of November, but we'll also have my first of my MVP countdown. Some of the names you've just heard will be in there. Some other guys that I haven't mentioned didn't quite have the weeks, but rest assured, they are still up there in contention. Anyway, guys, that's been me. I'm out.